teams will get more into that as the first game starts. So right into the pick ban, Morgana is going to be the first one, a big counter towards that Rakan, and then a ban on Galio out of Samsung.
Yeah, Galio, expected ban for the entirety of this matchup, just because both Crown and Faker prioritize the champion. Even though Crown hasn't played a whole lot of Galio, it does synergize quite well with what Samsung tries to do, especially considering Cuvee has been able to play so many carries. His Pleds, his Camille's that have done so much work for them, but I'm glad to see the Galio being prioritized out of Samsung, which has been a pick that has made waves but seemingly remains under the radar for a lot of teams. Not many teams have been prioritizing him as a first rotation, and I criticize that as a bit of a mistake, but we see Samsung address it properly, and now we get an entirely new set of picks and bans that we just had not seen all split long. None of these champions, except for Galio and Gragas towards the later half, had ever really seen the ban.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, this kind of ban phase. We have Zach getting through. That is going to be the first pickup for SKT right off the bat, almost auto-locked right off the bat there. That does mean they are giving away Caitlyn, and there is no Kalista available, but another big pick that has been coming in is Tristana in the AD carry side. We've seen Bang playing that a lot as well. And Samsung, they decide to go ahead and pick up Jarvan first.
And the Jarvan is likely to be a jungle Jarvan, but I much prefer this Tristana pick because we have seen one game of LCK Summer where we saw Zac into Caitlyn, and the Zac just obliterated Caitlyn. She never stood a chance. When you have Tristana, at least you have the opportunity to rocket jump out of all of his abilities, and you can punt him back. However, you do give up the combination, which we hadn't seen before, of both Zac and Caitlyn together. And those two, you know, can pack a punch in the later stages in the game, but at least Samsung is going with a draft that has a high amount of mobility and will hopefully be matched with a plenty of CC. And whoa, Baker going with a blind pick Lucian mid, so he basically carried through the game 2 against Afrika. So him drafting a blind Lucian here is just saying, I'm going to carry it again.
Yeah, it's really cool to see, especially after his star performance on that Cassiopeia up against Afrika. I mean, it was kind of Afrika not playing their best at League of Legends, but he looked fantastic on that. He looked like the Faker of old, the one that would always carry the games, visiting every lane and getting everybody ahead, especially himself with all the kills he picked up. So cool to see him on a carry champ. We are going to see Taliyah picked up for Crown, another one of these big picks that's just all over the mid lane, especially for Crown as well.
And now that the mid laners, AD carries, and potentially junglers, if the Jarvan does not turn out to be a flex pick, we can expect jungle, or rather the support, to be heavily prioritized now. I think the Braum makes a lot of sense here for Samsung, and both for SKT having 2 long-range carries as well as being able to block the wall, and then Tristana's synergy with Braum is awesome, so we need to see that champion come through. It makes a lot of sense for what these teams have. However, going with that pick does not allow you to have many tools against denying the Zac. Zac did get nerfed. His W is a little bit weaker. It costs more on some of his other spells, so the champion is not quite so powerful in the early game, but still is incredibly potent in starting team fights and appealing for the double AD carry lineup that SKT have drafted so far.
Yeah, the Maokai being banned out here. Another one of these picks that we saw, especially coming into 7:15 coming in, and Trundle himself also going to be taken off the field. So targeting Cuvee a bit, with a couple of top lane bans. Just giving some credit to that jungle Jarvan for Haru.
And this is really interesting to see because the Trundle we saw in the Afrika matchup was used against the Cho'Gath, and it's a great answer to the tanks and also into the Zac. If Zac jumps in, we've seen a million times AD carries hit that blob and he seemingly absorbs all the bullets and nothing happens to him, so the Trundle allows him to actually go down, but by removing him, Samsung respond with the Cho'Gath themselves. But is it worth perhaps a Braum? Even though it hasn't been one of Wolf's favorite picks, it likely can be taken still here, even though it's not one of his most played, just because of the simplicity that it comes through. But Alistar still remains, and that's going to be the pick for him. He's just been so stellar on this pick, making it work, and you have a solid lineup for SKT with 2 range AD carries and what appears to be an AP Cannon top, which we criticized that of Marin a whole lot, but I gotta say, this is actually the one time where in the composition it makes some sense, because you have engaged from the sides, You need an AP source, and it is going to be a great lane into the Cho.
Okay, well, I'll believe it when I see it. I want to see this cannon actually have some success. And Untara, who's been doing very well, who's actually kind of taken the main spot in the top lane for SKT, is going to get his hands. He's going to have a try at this cannon. You can see that the Rumble was banned out by the side of Samsung, so they don't essentially get to do that Rumble-Alistar combination that they do love to do. Is taken away, and of course the final pick, Tarek, on the side of Samsung. Okay, gonna try to keep that Tristana safe.
And it's a composition that we haven't seen from Samsung at all. This is such a different flavor for them, but Tarek himself can completely swing the outcome of these fights. What SKT wants to do, just go in with the combo from Zac and Alistar, have Untara flank, and then burst everybody down with the assault from afar from the AD carries. But if the Cosmic Radiance is there and negates that initial engage, then the counter attack from Samsung can be devastating. However, when it comes to SKT's team composition, they do find themselves at a deficit in the early game. When you have Zac against the Jarvan right now, they took it away early. They want to make some waves happen, and it's Haru. We haven't seen a whole lot of him. He took a game out of KT last time we saw him, but eventually they got stomped in games 2 and 3. And Untara, by the way, even though SKT has lost 4 games against Samsung this split, Untara never got a chance. It was only Huni. So maybe Untara is the answer for SKT to surpass Samsung.
Well, he's got a good lane to do it, and one of these champions that has been a bit underwhelming, so a bit of pressure to make that happen for himself in that Kennen versus Cho'Gath in the top lane. Also Ruler, a guy who has only played 1 game of Tristana and so much Varus, decides to go for that Tristana this time around. Let's see how game number 1 is going to go, though, as SKT and Samsung enter the Rift. The fans are out in force tonight, as this is a huge playoff game for both of these teams. So much on the line. Samsung, we are going to have a pause, guys, unfortunately, but Samsung, they need to do better than KT in order to get into Worlds off of just points. And SKT, they want to do as good as possible to potentially win off points here if they do not just straight up win LCK Summer.
While both teams have plenty of opportunities to qualify, they can obviously qualify through the gauntlet if they lose here. That's not where it's at. It's about the pride here in Korea. You are either the winner or you're the first loser. So they absolutely are fighting for that pride. They're fighting for making sure that they can be the best team. And it's not just the fans of these two teams that are cheering for them, because if you're a Longzhu fan, if you're a KT fan, you're taking sides here as well. All KT fans are pretty much Samsung fans today because they do not want to see SKT face off against KT, which has found a way to dismantle them twice already, and basically for an entire year after the creation of the team.
Yeah, not looking forward to that. And we got a little bit of extra information about the monitor issue here. Haru just seemingly forgot to set up some of his settings, but that's all done. It's all well and good now as the game has restarted. Shouldn't be any more problems as we go into this one.
Wow, so dazzling from Tarek. Is he taking pictures?
How does he move that stuff in midair? He's a magician.
His charm. Like a snake charmer, but for selfies. Which, on the topic of these two supports, you have Alistar and Tarek. And in the previous match, we saw Lulu versus Janna. So the whole rage is about the Ardent Sensor. How good is Ardent Sensor really? And I think that item gets overhyped by the success it has in solo queue, where coordinated dives, engages, and closing out of games aren't as apparent as they are in competitive, where you need the supports to currently not only have kill pressure to prevent your turrets from going down so early, but you also need them as an engage tools later on so you can have more flexibility in your draft. And that's why you now see the Tarek and the Alistar making a reappearance and starting to become more and more meta, just because they're higher value when it comes to the competitive matches. And I fully expect maybe one game of an Ardent sensor support here and there, but for the most part, these two teams will rely on having supports that can make plays.
And Wolf on the Alistar has been making plays every time we see him on this champion. Oh, looks like we have another pause. Maybe someone else wants a new chair or a new monitor.
It's Wolf. Is it going to be Wolf, I bet? Asking for another chair.
My skin isn't good. I got to change it.
No, wait.
Ruler says he can't hear out of one side of his headset. That's a problem.
Well, every time this happens on a match of this caliber, all we can say is that it's going to be a night that will pack everything, Valdez. We're going to get to see backdoors, Baron steals, Baron attempts, tower dives, 5v2s bottom lane, 1v1 deaths, you name it, because we're already starting off with the pauses. So
yeah.
we're starting to add the untangible aspects to the game that will make this night more memorable.
Yeah, that actually raises a good point in my mind that after SKT and Peanut were able to defeat a Freaker, right? They had that interview over at OGN, and they were talking to Peanut, and Peanut himself said that he thinks that any other jungler that goes up against him should be a bit nervous because of the ridiculous steals that he's done all year in his career, but also that night against Afrika, taking it away from Spirit, the Baron. And so it's interesting to see that Samsung, Ambition had kind of a wonky, lackluster game against Longju, and then they start a guy that's only played about 6 games the entire season to go up against Peanut. So lots of pressure on this younger jungler, this rookie jungler, to come in and defeat one of the greats.
That also just sounds like Peanut going for some self-propaganda, putting fear into the hearts.
Self-propaganda.
Yeah, into the hearts of the opposing teams. But in the meantime, we get to resume the game, and let's see what Haru can do in the early game, because the Jarvan has plenty of tools to do so. There is kill pressure in topside mid lane, a lot harder to gank. The Lucian's mobility will always allow him to escape, and we'll seldom see FAKER go for a relentless pursuit right from the get-go if he doesn't know that he's in the safety of the lane.
Oh man, stepping forward is Ruler. That went right through Ruler. That was weird interaction, but either way.
Doesn't matter, the trade was won. That's all that it falls under. And one of the reasons why Tristana is so obnoxious these days is that you always have to respect her last hitting. At no point can you actually take your eyes off of Tristana, because her explosive shot will just kill the minion, so you always have to be moving around the lane. Any other AD carry, you don't care if they're last hitting. You're mostly looking at their positioning towards yourself. If they're looking for trading auto attacks or sacrificing CS to look for an engage, or utilizing their spells. Whereas Tristana, not only does she have those elements in her kit, but you have to always step away from the creep wave, otherwise she's just gonna harass you. And it adds another element, another dimension to the laning phase that a lot of teams might not be prepared to deal with. And then we see her become a higher priority because of her late game antics, where we see the 80% crit mauling down individual players that get caught off guard, as well as the safety of her kit.
Her mid to late game is pretty ridiculous. Once she gets that insane amount of crit, she just walks forward with her crazy range at about, level 15, 16, 17, and just begins mowing people down. Can be a little bit hard to deal with. Let's see if SKT has that countered here.
Well, SKT will be perfectly happy to let Tristana get to that point and trust in their own abilities as a hard engaged composition with the double carry. So they'll have no problem just taking it easy, letting Zach farm, waiting for their lanes to start passively building CS advantages. As we already see on the map, you've got Lucian expectedly starting to draw a little bit of an advantage on the mid lane, as well as the Cannon in the top side. And as long as they can get out of the laning phase relatively well, they'll be fine, because when it comes that late game, you know that the double AD carries are going to have an easy time mowing down the tanks, because you're going to be able to build the Mortal Reminders as well as the Lord Dominic's completed armor penetration item to try to take down that choke.
See a bit of trading back and forth here between Ruler and Bang. It just looks like Ruler and CoreJJ, they just want to push the lane as fast as possible and try to deal with this very hard to deal with Caitlyn and Alistair lane. You can see Wolf and Bang kind of holding the lane here before this turret. Don't want to let it get too close.
Well, they're just happy farming. Already they have a 9 CS gold lead. And you mentioned that Ruler only had 1 game of Tristana played, and this might just be that he's not practicing enough on the champion, as we just see on our screen, missing some CS. The explosive shot can also be your undoing as a Trist player, where it messes up your other last hits, and already he finds himself at a loss of gold compared to Caitlyn, and that's not going to be good for this champion. She absolutely needs to stay ahead of the Caitlyn, because if Kate starts getting an advantage on you, you need to wait for much more gold for you to be able to take on her, or take her on in a 1v1.
Watch out for this, though. The culling is coming out. Crown getting super low. The last bullet is going to take him down. First blood, a solo kill to FAKER on the Lucian.
Look at that. His eyes are wide open. It's like, are you serious? Did you not just burn your heal or flash? And I am just as flabbergasted. What's up, Crown? This guy has been known all split long for saving his summoners until the very end, utilizing them only when it's necessary, but just a brain fart there, because he could have easily lived out of that one. Even when we saw FAKER in his matchups against Lucians with heal, he would just use heal to get out of the culling and survive, but I guess Crown just forgot that he had those summoners, because that just should not have happened.
Not the best mistake that you want to have happen when you're going up against a Lucian lane, or against anyone really. This is not a good start for Crown in the mid lane. And it was the last bullet. You know, as you said, he was just trying to avoid using the summoner as much as possible, and it was his undoing. I guess he'll have heal for the next gank at least.
He'll also have a Dark Seal, so I'm not sure why he went with that itemization. After dying, you go for that item. It's like giving up First Blood as Elise and going with Mobility Boots. So we'll take another look at that one. So he basically misses everything right away, and we're just going to get to see a Matrix angle on his own death. Goodbye, Mr. Smith.
That was pretty sick. I love FAKER's just composure, right? He's baiting out the seismic shove. He's just dodging back and forth, just baiting it out, like waiting for a cat to dive at a toy. It's like, okay, use it, and then I'll burst forward, then I'll Relentless Pursuit, then I'll get on top of you. And Crown fell for it. Next time, I hope he uses his summoners. So that's definitely a good spot for FAKER in the mid lane on that Lucian. No doubt picking up that First Blood alone, not having to burn any of his own summoners as well.
It's like going into Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and losing without using your lifeline. So you're like, why didn't you just use it?
Saving it for the $500,000 question, no doubt. That's when the 4-man gank comes in. Looking for a gank up top. Here is Haru, who has hit level 6, but did get pushed in. He is still hanging up there, and there has been so much vision of Peanuts on this Zac, by the way. They've known where he's been for a long time. Will they go for the gank? He's looking for it. The Flag and Dragon's so close. He's waiting for the knockup first. Into the second one. The Cataclysm comes down, and the Feast will pick up a kill for Cuvée. 2-1 on top of Untara.
Beautiful chain CC there from Samsung. The second that the Rupture came out, you knew Untara was dead. Impossible to get away from that gank, and that's going to be the entire story for this matchup. He didn't get to burn his flash, but if he ever gets caught by those two, he is in a death wish.
Here we go again. This time it's not going to be as relentless, the pursuit from FAKER. He's out of mana as well. And Crown still has both of his summoners.
Crown will now need to make the most out of this Taliyah by looking towards the lane. So bot lane, unlikely for them to find anything there against the Alistar, but top side, I think that Untara will be the champion, or rather the player that they'll try to pick on, because a way that teams have found victories against SKT is finding individual members and just making them feed as hard as possible. Here we see a battle for vision, but Haru has not been spotted.
Okay, hopping on in, he's gonna miss them. Down comes the Cosmic Radiance, pushing away Haru. His Wolf gets him out of there. Peanut kidnapping himself to safety.
Party balloon there for himself. Just didn't want us to have any part of that one, but you see what happens when no carries are involved. The tanks just look at each other dead in the eye and it's like, well, we have no business being here. So at least both teams seem to be on the same page when it comes to who the damage dealers are and what fights it can engage on.
Faker with this lead is making it harder for Crown to stay in lane, let alone push the lane and try to influence the other lanes on the map. Saying if you want to get near that minion wave, you're going to lose about half your health bar.
And his itemization is sick because not only does it help him dodge out against Talia's spells with the high mobility of the early Zerker Greaves, but you also get to dodge out of Jarvan with a lot more ease. Making that lane safer than ever and allowing him to continue that push that keeps Taliyah under tower and has his lanes farming safely. And now that top lane has already died, it's all about Bang when it comes down to the later stages in the game. He didn't have the greatest game 2 against Afrika, but he's on a different champion here on the Caitlyn with that late game prowess that we haven't seen for such a long time, ever since she entered the permaban list.
Yeah, I'm sure these guys still know how to play it, and you can see Bang's doing okay so far with his lead. We are going to have the Infernal Drake being soloed down by Peanut. Loves to go for these solo dragons. And Faker just, once again, very calmly sidestepping all of the CC from that Taliyah. Bang and Wolf making their way over, and Ruler and Cortez, they're just a little bit too late. Not even going to use the smite here. Caitlyn picks that one up. TP is going to be used. Wolf burning his ultimate, saying, okay, I'll just get out of this one. And that will be a pretty much free Infernal Drake going over to SKT.
Yeah, the Infernal Drake will have infinitely more value than in other compositions. When you have double AD carries and then an AP cannon top, that's going to sting. And the use of teleport there from Samsung is the first sign of real worry. I guess Crown's solo death was the first major one, but this one, as a team, what a bizarre call. The Dragon's already been taken. There was no setup to go for that fight whatsoever. You know that Zac can go over the wall, that the Caitlyn can also go over the wall, that they don't have any angle into this fight, so they commit to it, and has to be some sort of disjoint when it comes to the bottom lane and the top side, because now the top laner has advantage in the teleport with Cannon, and that just means that SKT can set up a dive on the bottom side, and we see pings going onto the bottom side of the map. So this dual lane might be in some danger if SKT decide to attack there.
Already thinking about setting it up. They have 2 wards in position there. We'll see if they can set up some kind of dive. Samsung has 1 nice control ward in the river, but needs to get a little bit more vision around the area. See, Peanut was making his way up towards top, but at the end of the day, Kive just went back home, and Peanut returned as well. See if he can just pick up some buffs and go for somewhere else. Haven't seen Faker get hit by one of these seismic shoves yet, as in fact now he's pushing in the Taliyah in the mid lane.
When it comes into the lane, I don't think we'll ever get to see Lucian getting hit by one of those. Considering how far Crown was missing them, I think that with the itemization that Faker's also going for, it's going to be way too difficult for him. And that's just not their job. Their job is simply to wave clear and make sure that they can keep each other accountable for their position. And that will enable the possibility of a dive into the bottom side of the map. Now, if SKT want to pull that off, their first step needs to be getting rid of vision into the bottom side of the river. So right now, it fully belongs to Samsung with 5 wards littered all over. And we get to see Wolf go for a shallow ward. And even though we did see the teleport advantage happen and the ward of the control being cleared right now from Wolf, just because of the motto that SKT signed up for when they drafted this composition, I think that they're not going to pressure for it. It's too difficult to go for it right now. They could look for it if Samsung wasn't so adverse or efficient at getting this vision down to protect themselves, so they have no need for it. They got an Infernal Dragon, and even though the gold is even, their lanes are passively winning in pressure, and they'll be A-okay with having Caitlyn Lucian in the late game.
We're getting another spot of trivia as they bait out some more spells from Crown, but on average, SKT destroyed 2. Okay, disappeared. Never mind. You guys got time to read it. And Faker pushing down mid once again, using that calling very early, just trying to push out Crown, but here comes Haru from the right side. You can see Faker already dodging up towards the north.
It's just no business for Haru in the mid lane. I'm so surprised to see them not attempt another kill onto Untara. He showcased to be the easiest champion to kill already with how effective that gank was, and never again did we see a revisit into the lane. He's been shoved under tower all day long, but an easy dive could have happened into the cannon. So Samsung just seemingly fine with playing it passively, but this will not be in their benefit because now we get to see a second Infernal spawning, and if SKT continue to have their way with these lanes with a passive early game, they're going to start amassing significant damage advantages when it comes to those stacking dragons.
Yeah, they'll definitely be looking towards that objective, as Ntara has just been allowed to farm up top. You see finally Haru was looking to make his way up here, puts down a control ward, but Ntara was just warding the Rift Herald. Much as Samsung had a lot of vision around the bottom side of the river, this time SKT has 3 control wards up towards the top, including a green one on top of that Rift Herald. So they know exactly the potential for Samsung to go for that. They have the Feast with the Cho'Gath up top. They do want to make a play there.
But here is where things start to get juicy, Valdez, because we now see Faker getting blue buff at level 12. He's about to hit that level 13. He's going to have 2 levels of his Relentless Pursuit, and that's going to be a nightmare to deal with because now he gets to push as hard as he can without feeling any lack of mana. Every time we've looked at mid lane, he's been out of mana from putting pressure onto Crown, but now he has sustained in both mana and HP now that the Blade of the Ruined King is completed, and here comes the all-in.
Yep, here we go again. The Cullen coming out. Crown not burning any of his summoners once again. He does get away. Peanut finding Haru in the jungle, just one-on-one for now. Haru going to flag and drag over towards that blue buff that is started, but in the meantime, we have a fight up top. Thankfully, Ntara is able to land a stun, so he can get away from that one. And Haru just going to take the blue buff because Crown isn't there.
And take a look at the timing that SKT and Faker specifically goes for that all-in. What seemingly looks like just Crown overstepping has way more implications than what we get to see because the blue buff gets to be stolen from Pina, but vision gets to be acquired into the blue side for SKT, and that vision will set them up for this next dragon. Another all-in from Faker onto Crown means that they'll be able to get this second Infernal stack going, and now they've even called reinforcements from Cube onto the mid lane, but this is Lucian. It's like he's skating into the mid lane. You just can't gank this guy.
Yeah, you're not going to really come close unless you commit 3 members plus, I'd say at this point, and they don't really have the resources to go for that. So here we go. The Infernal Drake, the second one of the game, is started. Haru is hanging around nearby. It is going to be a 4-on-4 for now. Both of these top laners do have the teleport, but will it come in time? This is being burned down, and Samsung just going to give it away as SKT had all of that control with the vision and all their members around that Drake, and they pick up the second Infernal of the game.
It's exactly what I was saying. They push the lanes in, and because the itemization of Blade of the Ruined King is completed, they can burn it down quickly enough. They had a ward ready for a teleport if Samsung were to commit, but they were just too damn fast at it. So SKT having foresight and seeing what they want to do with the game, playing accordingly, and now they have that second Infernal, and wow, Mountain as a third. The Dragon RNG is on their side today, and if they walk away with this other one, when it comes to controlling the Baron, Samsung's just not going to have any hope.
Yeah, SKT, even though the gold doesn't really reflect it, as it is exactly even at this point, and still no First Blood turret has come down, even though Samsung is getting close. SKT picking up all of the very important objectives up until this point. SKT has won 19 games with the gold lead at 15 minutes in this split. I guess they had the gold lead at 15 minutes in this one, although it must have been a minuscule one.
Well, our game is dead even when it comes to gold, and while the Dragons and pressure have been in the favor of SKT, it doesn't mean that Samsung is by any means out of this situation. They have Tristana in the late game. We've seen what she can do. They've already been pushing the bottom lane quite well as they're about to go for a first brick if they can get their hands onto that lane. Wait a second.
Oh, forcing that flash out of Crown, who does get away. Haru was jumping in, but immediately after he saw Peanut, just made his way out with his tail between his legs. forcing a big summoner off of Crown at this point in the game.
Guess that's what it takes to get Crown to burn his flash, but in return, Jungler's showing into the mid lane. They can just safely push into the bottom side, and the pressure pays off. 2 towers in the favor of SKT, and now we get to see the snowball just starting to build up. They were just looking for the perfect snow to build that perfect snowball to get Samsung out of the contention for these wards, and it looks like SKT is just playing such a smooth control game over Samsung, and they seemingly have no idea where to pressure on the map.
You gotta wait until the Infernal Drakes come in so that the snow melts just a little bit, so it's not super powdery. It's more of this icy, hard snow that you can whack your friends in the face with. It's definitely working out for them. They got a huge lead from this, as they do take down both of those very important early turrets.
It's like when you open your new batch of ice cream and it tells you wait 10 to 15 minutes before eating it so that it melts a little bit and it's perfect temperature to eat, not just completely frozen. So the Infernals there, the perfect temperature for SKT to start snowballing onto Samsung.
Exactly. Well, after that, they have just sent their bottom lane duo into the mid lane to begin pushing. Already, Caitlyn with that 2-item spike, the Infinity Edge and the Static Shiv. Tristana still working on the Infinity Edge, which is extremely important at this point in time. So would love to take a look at the gold at this point between the different 80 carries and see exactly how far ahead Bang is at this point, because it looks like a lot.
At least in the levels, they're still the same, but now SKT has the advantage in pressure, and they're using it towards the Baron side of the map. With Faker being on the side lanes, he loves to do this on the Cassiopeia. Obviously, it's meta to have your dual lane swap into the mid lane after a while, but an engage onto Crown, and he just got crit.
Oh man, this 1v1 all the time, it just brings down Crown essentially alone. Peanut coming in for just the cleanup, and it's been basically the Faker show against Crown the entire time, really setting the tone for this entire series.
Dear Lord, and there is a Knight's Vow already onto him, and in the 2v2, they don't stand a chance in this situation. And as you say, it's the Faker show. It was the Faker show in game 2 of Afrika SKT. Some would say that Faker got robbed of the MVP. I would side with them because he was doing so much work, and once again, almost single-handedly just exerting as much pressure onto Samsung as a hydraulic press, and they have no answer to him. Who's going to lane against Faker? You need 2 men at this point.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that Samsung, they saw the Lucian be picked up, and then they were like, okay, we can have Crown lane Talia into this. He should be fine. And perhaps on paper he should be, but not today. Not with the playoff buff that it seems Faker has received. So we're going to take another look at the 1v1. It's just Crown being burst down, very close to the turret. Peanut just comes in, uses one ability, and takes the kill.
It's a playoff buff, but this has to be some sort of debuff onto Crown because he overstepped before the minion wave even hit. So another mistake akin to the one that gave up first blood against Faker, and he's just not having the greatest game of his life. Remember the series against, I believe it was Jin Air, where Samsung ended up prioritizing the Orianna over pretty much everything because it was so important that Crown got a good matchup, and it feels like this just might be the case, that Crown needs to get on one of these important picks for him to start thriving in. And then we look at the Cassiopeia ban. Could it be that Crown's current pick of comfort is Cassiopeia? SKT scouted out properly, bans it out, and now Crown is left with something that he's just not in a comfort zone. That could very well be the situation that we see ourselves in, and it draws the opinion that maybe Cassiopeia and Lucian might become heavily contested picks for the rest of the series.
Would have to agree with those kind of thoughts, and it's definitely pretty cool to see Faker stepping it up. I also want to point out how he gets his scanner, as he always does, but it's like even more oppressive. Hold that thought, Crown is being poked down. Okay, looks like he's going to be okay, but on the Lucian, who gets the double shot after the relentless pursuit, and just with how fast he is, with all those items that speed him up, he can take out all these wards so easily, and he's gotten a ton of vision up in the top side taken away. Ruler is recalling all alone. Will he get out in time? It looks like he will, just barely, before Untaro was able to spot him.
Finally, somebody from Samsung taking an objective, saving themselves from the perfect game. So the bottom turret is still available for them to take, with Cho'Gath pushing that in, but this would mean that SKT, once they complete the trifecta of dragons, they don't even care about that tower. It's all about the Baron, and they don't have anything that will seriously be a threat when it comes to stopping them in here. With the Blade of the Rune King from the Fed Lucian, the Caitlyn that already has that 2-item spike, the Zag's % damage, this Baron would go down in a jiffy, and Samsung with no way to defend on a 1-3-1 situation, as we have seen how difficult it is to defend against Lucian. A Baron would likely be the beginning of the end for Samsung.
When we took a look at the gold a little bit earlier on, just the difference in gold between the players on both sides, Faker was about 2.6K ahead of Crown, and Bang was about 1,000 ahead of Ruler. And if you take a look at the gold lead right now, that's basically all of the gold lead that SKT has, just put onto those two players. And so far it's really shown, and that's really where you do want that gold lead, onto 280 carries. We're seeing the return of Lucian with the help of Faker, as he was looking a little bit lackluster towards the mid and end parts of LCK summer regular season.
And the thing about Lucian and Cassiopeia, which are currently Faker's go-to picks, is that nobody else can truly play them to that level. They're highly mechanical champions. Faker, obviously, on Lucian can play him well, utilizing dashes and the many combinations that it has, but Cassiopeia is also surprisingly difficult. Hitting your Q is so important when it comes to dealing damage, and understanding how a fight is going to happen gives you an indication of when to use your miasma, which so many players utilize wrongly and have players eventually flash out. But Faker is not one of those players. He can see plays seconds before it happens. How many times have we heard the story of Faker calling out a play 5 seconds before it happens? Oh, I got a kill. 5 seconds later, somebody dies. And that kind of foresight is necessary when it comes to playing these difficult champions. And I don't think that anybody that will try to imitate Faker's champion pool will find nearly as much success on them.
Well, Crown was looking pretty good on the Cassiopeia. I wouldn't say it was 100% Faker level, but Faker said, I don't need to play my Cassiopeia. As long as Crown doesn't get that comfort peg, we should be good in this series. And so far, it has turned out to be correct. By the way, the fourth dragon of the game is going to be another Mountain Drake. Hold that thought. Faker going 1v1 on Taharu. In comes Peanuts. They're looking to come in from the left side, as well as Zuntara from bottom. But Samsung effectively able to disengage, and nobody will go down just yet.
But chunking the jungler is going to be a pretext for what we're about to see. If this happens again and Haru is truly forced to recall, then that would be the cue for SKT to start the Baron. And you can see how worried Haru was in this situation. He went back to throw a flag to make sure that everything was safe, to know that SKT had recalled so that he could have his own timing, just because of how quickly SKT can take down the Baron themselves. So Samsung has to be on high guard when it comes to defending this Baron, and unfortunately for them, they don't have a single ward in their own red side, so they need to start getting vision up there pronto, otherwise they will lose that objective.
Yeah, we see CoreJJ attempting to put down some vision, but so far failing, as it is all SKT's land over on this right side. The red buff is about to spawn too. That would be a nice cheeky pickup for Bang if he can get it over the wall. Doesn't look like that will happen though. Just setting down his traps. Almost steals it. It's close enough.
Samsung really needs to step up their vision game, and this has to be Ruler and Crown also helping out with control wards. None of them have any in their inventory or even placed, which is not doing them any good. They need to get control back of this map. Otherwise, they'll find themselves doing what we see them right now, grouping up together to find a way to get vision. And while it's good and all to clear out the wards, it means that you spread yourself out, or you don't have the opportunity to spread yourself out, rather, and get farm on your side lanes, which does build the gold lead further for SKT.
I mean, look at Samsung trying to start a fight in the mid side, but SKT in perfect position They got that 1-3-1 going on. Faker in the top side saying, I dare someone to come up and try to 1v1 me. Looks like Crown is going to be that one. And here we go again. The 1v1 begins and the culling comes out and the flash is used, but it's not enough. Faker with another solo kill onto Crown. He's just too much on this champion right now.
And in none of those kills, Faker even has to burn any summoners. He has been stomping Crown. It's not even close. With almost 100 CS advantage on them, solo kills left, right, and center. This matchup could not have been more one-sided, and Lucian has to be banned for the rest of the series because I just don't see what Crown is going to do against him anymore. It seems like a mental block at this point.
The flag was used for Haru. He's going to have to flash for this one, but they go for the counter engage. They get Ruler in the back. There's the stun. The Cosmic Radiance does come down, but the rest of them are going to be in bad position, and a couple of them do get taken out. Nice disengage and pull off of that Baron to get a couple more kills. And they should rely on Wolf here to just push Haru out as the Baron is going to go down. They might even get Haru here as he's playing a little bit too close. He gets extremely close, and there's the culling, and Faker will get another kill on his Lucian.
Just taking names with the culling. My God, he's got everybody on the hit list. Who else is going to be next for Faker to take down? And SKT just playing some beautiful League of Legends, utilizing their champions to pressure the mistakes that Samsung is providing for them and never letting go. Here we go. Another look at the fight. As soon as Zach jumps in, you know what the plan is in short. Kennen gets knocked back, but it's already a 4v5. They don't stand a chance against this. Cosmic Radiance is not going to do anything for them when you don't have your Talia, when it's only Tristana dealing DPS.
And the cleanup was easy enough for them as SKT is running away with this game. 100% the story when everybody watches the replay or even just watching this one as we have been going. It's Faker versus Crown. 4-0-2 versus the 0-3-0. He's going to have to step it up, Crown, if he wants to actually have a chance against Faker, who has already taken his name in game number 1 of a best-of-5 series.
He absolutely has. The champions might be different, and we can put a lot of the emphasis as to the Samsung mistakes onto Crown, but I do still feel like they could have found more opportunities when it comes to asserting pressure to the top side of the map. They found one good gank, but never again did we see Samsung going for anything proactive. It was only one attempt, and that's just not going to cut it when you're under so much pressure from SKT. So next draft from Samsung will have to be slightly different. They'll have to target different champions from SKT if they truly want to have a fighting chance in this series, because this game 1 has been all SKT.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Faker can do as he is extremely fed at this point. The Phantom Dancer going 1v1 onto Ruler. That was a 3-shot.
Oh.
Goodbye, Tristana. You're not going to be the one who takes him out. You're going to need the rest of your team to do it, but they're not even going to have time. 10,000 gold ahead, 2 inhibitors go down. They might even push for the game.
GG go next. This one's all done. Holy. Wow, the crits, yeah. Triple crit onto the Tristana. They thought they could get him with the stun.
And another engage here, just to clean up the double kidnap. Because why not? To add insult to injury into one of the most one-sided weak games we've seen. Picking up the Penta. Wait, no. I think it was. Perhaps? No, it doesn't look like it. Just the Quadra. There's the GG. SKT with a smash over Samsung in game number 1.
Oh my gosh, that was just a landslide of a game, and undoubtedly Faker, just so much MVP out of this one. Completely carried the hell out of this game, and Samsung has to be left dumbfounded because their preparation, if they thought this was how well prepared they had to be, they are sorely mistaken, because it seems like SKT, and Wolf specifically, the rest of the lineup, they can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? And the answer is they can run it. They can do anything they want with it, because this match was so one-sided.
That's one of the most one-sided mid lane versus mid lane matchups we've seen in a while. I mean, that was the kind of thing you go in solo queue and you're like, well, can we get a report on this guy? Like, what's going on? Like, he must be trolling. And obviously, he is feeling the pressure. Everybody on his team is coming over and trying to get his morale up because, guys, we could have potentially 4 more games. The series is not over. And we've seen this happen before and players come back from it, but he really needs to get his mindset together because he's not looking good right now.
They need to pick him up, so it's good that the team is helping him out. But the benefit for him is that those are not mistakes that happen just out of nowhere. They weren't random little itty-bitty mistakes that can happen. It was simply just a complete off game for Crown. And those are typically the games that you have an easier time shaking off, forget about it, move on to the next one, and hey, you get to go onto the blue side this time as well as Samsung. So the draft can change, the pick order, they can put Crown on a better matchup into the mid lane. In the meantime, we'll look at where it all started. A bizarre 1v1 where Crown saved his summoners and died.
I think it was the last bullet, quite literally, and that was solo number 1. Forces the flash out and gets solo number 2. He had already picked up a kill with the help of Peanut underneath the tier 1 turret in the top lane as well before that. And here was just the follow-up. It was already 4v5 in this one. SKT as a team able to clean up quite easily at the end of this one. And they also do pick up this kill onto Haru to make sure there was no steal. Another calling kill for Faker, because why not? Can we give this guy a double MVP? Does that exist?
Oh, I actually looked at this and
Watch
so
this.
He
Watch
doesn't even
this.
hit. It's 2 autos. One or 4
2,
autos.
3.
Like the Q doesn't even connect.
Yeah.
So it's literally just the W
Pop, pop, pop.
popping, and then the second after the relentless pursuit.
Someone got Faker's gat because he was coming out, and this was even more hilarious. Underneath the pool, taking out 2 members as he dies, almost from the grave. And the results, extremely one-sided. There was 1 tower and 2 kills that went over to the side of Samsung. This graph is pretty obvious. I mean, Faker got fed from the beginning, and he ran away with it.
And this is scary for the rest of the world, because if this really is SKT coming back and saying, hey, this is our true form, you gotta be shaking in the knees, man. This is, as an individual, for Faker to be playing like this, it's a lot to handle. Because are you gonna drop a Lucian ban? That ban is basically like a waste of a ban. It's like today's pocket picks with Hui's Aurelion Soul. Do you really drop that ban? Nobody else is actually playing this as well to this level, and it doesn't affect anything.
And do you ban not only Lucian, but Cassiopeia? Lots of questions to be answered, guys. We are going to jump into our first commercial break before we go into game number 2 of Samsung versus